Welcome back to the Create Harmony podcast. Let me tell you what you're going to find here. In this space, we settle into an intentional rhythm, and it's one that helps us savor life's blessings and ground ourselves in gratitude. And today, we get to expand that space a little wider. I'm going to be joined by a guest whose work and presence reflect much of what we value here at Create Harmony: connection, intention, and a deep respect for the rhythms that shape our lives. So wherever you are, settle in, take a breath, and join us for this conversation. Welcome back to the Create Harmony podcast. I am your host, Sally Burlington, and this is episode 172. And we are excited to welcome Amanda Rigby, who is the executive director of the Well Mental and Spiritual Care, and she also happens to be a pastor in our church. And welcome, Amanda.
Thank you, Sally. I'm super honored to be here and be a part of the podcast.
Thank you. And we are just excited. We want to hear all about the Well. Because I go to our church, I know some about the Well, but I want you to give us the backstory of sort of how the idea came together and where it started for you.
The Well first started in the middle of the night in a conversation with my best friend from college. We were on the phone after I had texted Elizabeth to say I had an epiphany, and I wonder if maybe you'd have time to talk about it tomorrow. And Elizabeth said back to me, well, I'm awake too. Maybe we could talk about it now. So approaching 1 a.m, we hopped on the phone together and had this conversation because I had been sitting with this reality that as a pastor to young people, there were lots of barriers to getting my church members, my community members, the mental health care that they needed. This was at the height of the COVID lockdown. I was working with youth and with their parents and with families, with kids. And all of those folks were, I think, especially hard hit by the isolation, by the challenges that arose during that time. And nobody's mental health was great. Mental wellness was great. And so that was a burden on my heart, on my spirit during that season, because I felt like as a pastor, I obviously knew that I couldn't care for the mental wellness of these people God had entrusted to me because I wasn't qualified for that. And it felt like part of my job was to help them get the care that they needed. And even in a really privileged place like I was serving at the time, it was still really hard to help people find care, whether that was because of health insurance or, there's so many amazing therapists and counselors out there. They were all booked up. If you talk to any one of them about that time, they all had waiting lists and all of these things. And so that was the weight that I was sitting with that late evening that prompted me to reach out to my friend who is a therapist. And so we, that night, in the middle of the night, had this, I think it was about 3 hours of conversation about how to envision a practice of mental health and spiritual care that was housed inside of a church for the sake of serving both the church and the larger community. So we kind of dreamed up this whole plan that evening, and we actually did come up with the name The Well that evening because as a Christian pastor, obviously the well itself is such a powerful image of healing. That story of Jesus and the woman at the well in John chapter 4, where she is seen and offered dignity and offered the knowledge of living water and eternal life in this one amazing moment, and then she's empowered to go and tell her story to her community. And is sort of one of the earliest preachers of the gospel. And so that story means so much to me. It's a story of healing, and the imagery of water for both of us is just a powerful source of life and healing. And wells are such places of community where they exist today still, but also throughout human history. And so for a lot of reasons, that was the imagery that came to us that night. And so that was in 2021. We had about 3 years of planning and conversation to get it started. And then we were lucky enough to be able to partner with Edenton Street United Methodist Church and really get rooted in a church that was already rooted in the community. So we were starting to put our roots in the church, and the church has these deep, deep roots in the community. And so that's been a huge gift to us. So we're 2.5 years in, past our formal launch in January of 2024. And now we've hit the ground running. We've got a staff of therapists, spiritual directors, life coaches, and all of those folks offer our services for individuals and in group settings. And so we're still figuring out building the plane as we fly it. But
yeah,
but
that's always fun.
Yeah, always fun. I'm learning a lot. As someone who went to seminary, I don't have a ton of business training, so I'm learning, and
yeah.
And it's been a gift and a blessing to be a part of it this fall.
Well, you spoke a little bit to the scope of, we have therapists, spiritual directors, life coaches, but I love it if you could say just a little bit more about some of the offerings that the Well has to offer.
Absolutely. So our mission is to create pathways toward healing and wholeness in the community by offering accessible and affordable mental and spiritual care. So we're definitely a mental well-being kind of place. And for us, that looks like a multifaceted approach. We sort of think that every person is going to thrive best in their life when they have a constellation of care around them, right? A network of caregivers who are both, friends and family and supportive community members, but also people who maybe have some training or some wisdom to offer for the sake of healing and wholeness. And so our hope is to offer, and it is what we are doing, a multiplicity of ways to engage in healing and wholeness work. So probably most obviously is therapy and counseling. So we have people with different kinds of qualifications. They're all licensed in the state of North Carolina in their respective fields, and they offer evidence-based care. So this is more of the clinical side of what we do. And so for some people, that is the only thing they need. It's just that clinical approach. And for some people, they need that and maybe something a little extra, something that's more focused on the spirit rather than the mind, more focused on faith rather than just what is mental, right? And so that's where the spiritual direction and the life coaching pieces come in. So our spiritual directors are trained, as are the life coaches. They are certified. And so what those folks do is offer more relational care as opposed to clinical care. And that is done just like therapy and counseling, primarily on a individual basis, although we also offer like couples counseling and therapy for families. And so there's things for the individual, things for the family. And then our community classes are where we sort of get creative and imagine different modes of connecting with different groups of people. It's also, this is sort of the unspoken secret of our community classes. It's our attempt to maybe lower some of the stigma that comes along with seeking mental wellness, that comes along with admitting need and admitting that you can't do it all by yourself, right? So whatever that looks like, we try to just lower the threshold, lower the bar so that people can step into a space, receive maybe tools or ideas or conversations that they may not otherwise have gotten. And then to see, this actually can be a safe space or even a brave space for me to seek healing and wholeness. And so some of the things that we've offered that have been really successful, we've done some really small, intimate couple enrichment offerings where, couples sign up together to try to strengthen their relationship with a licensed couple and family therapist. And so that's been really fruitful. One of our spiritual directors has taught a series of aging classes, aging as a spiritual and that's been super popular. And I think probably that's been the most successful series of classes that we've done, just because I think, suddenly you're retiring and your whole life is different and you're trying to figure out all the things, including, but not limited to, a spiritual life. What does it look like to be a spiritual person, to be a person of faith in a season of retirement and rest? And that's very different than what it looks like to be a spiritual person in a time of work. And so that's been really great. We've had one of our social work interns is a yoga practitioner, and so she's
Mm.
offered some yoga classes, restful yoga or yoga nidra, and we've also done, we had one of the therapists offer a sort of post-election support group just for people who are feeling high anxiety and despair. And that was online. That was fully online. So we try to just experiment. It's all a big experiment of what works for people, what doesn't, what feels accessible, what doesn't. But, we've had pretty good success. I'd say maybe like 75% of what we've tried to do has been successful. And then the other 25% were like, must not have been a good
Yeah,
combination of
sure.
details. Let's try again some other time. So
Right.
yeah, we're just trying to figure out how to offer tools and support for people in ways that
We love that's awesome. You have some fabulous offerings. Love that. I want to circle back to we talked about the fact that you have spiritual directors and life coaches. And I have just finished my training as a spiritual director. I know that you are also a spiritual director. And what I feel like I'm learning and discovering, one of the many, many things that I feel like I'm learning and discovering is a lot of people don't know what spiritual directors are or what the difference between that and a life coach. So I'd love for you to speak to that a little.
I spend a lot of my time as the executive director of the Well distinguishing between therapy and counseling, spiritual direction, and life coaching.
Yeah.
And I do think that first thing that I said about, therapy and counseling is definitely a more clinical approach, and spiritual direction and life coaching are definitely more relational. So
Hmm.
those two kind of exist in the same category, but they are distinct because a spiritual director really is the job of the spiritual director is to help draw the focus of both the director, the directee, and also the spirit, the divine spirit, to what is happening within the spirit of this individual person. And so I always joke that spiritual director is actually a misnomer
Yeah,
because
for
we're
sure.
not the ones directing anything. Now you know that for yourself fully.
Yeah.
But really it is the spirit that is the true director. And I like and prefer the term spiritual companion much better.
Agreed.
That my job as a spiritual director is to journey with someone,
Mm.
to reflect back to them what I'm witnessing, to ask, pointed questions, to not to lead or to influence, but just to wonder really profoundly with one another about what is happening within them and around them. And so yeah, I would say a spiritual director is much more like a companion.
Mm.
And then I would say a life coach is I don't want to diminish the work of life coaching because I think it's so important. I would say a life coach is almost like a skilled cheerleader, like a
Mm.
very gifted encourager, someone who can help an individual maybe connect with their own gifts and figure out how those gifts empower them to do good work in the world, right? So you might say that a life coach helps with the work of calling and purpose,
Mm.
whereas a spiritual director helps more with the journey of life in general as a spiritual being.
Agreed.
So there's overlap for sure. I think probably life coaches and spiritual directors have a Venn diagram that's not all that distinct, but I do think I would recommend for people who are in transition, who are maybe like thinking about their career and
Mm.
what that
Hmm.
means for their life and their sense of purpose, like all of that kind of stuff, I would say life coaching is the way to go.
Mm.
But if someone is trying to grow in their spiritual journey, if they're trying to maybe go deeper within themselves or deeper within their practice of faith, spiritual direction is a great, great tool. And life coaching, I think, can be longer term, but in my experience, it tends to be shorter. Like maybe it would be life coaching for a year or for six
Hmm.
months,
Hmm.
but spiritual direction I found is typically sort of a longer process.
Yeah, agreed. I
I
agree.
don't have a spiritual director myself, and I intend to have a spiritual director myself for my whole life. So
Yes, me too. Me too. I love my spiritual director in the process. I always feel like the word listening needs to be in there somewhere, and I'm not sure exactly. Spiritual listener seems a bit odd, I guess, but it feels like so much of the spiritual direction process is about listening and helping the other person listen to what the spirit has to say.
I think that's exactly right. And so a lot of times I'll have directees come to me and say, like, this is so amazing. Like, thank you so much for everything you're doing. And I just have to tell them, hey, thank you. That's really kind. I'm just witnessing.
Right. I'm just here. I'm not I'm not doing anything other than listening.
That's right. And I'm creating space.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is actually I think we
Right.
live in a world that doesn't allow us often to stop and pause and consider and feel and all of that at the same time with a particular lens of spirituality. Like we just don't have many spaces like that. So it's not even really me or what I bring to the table, although I hope that that can be helpful too. But it really is the container, the space that is very sacred, that is very embodied, but also deeply spiritual.
Absolutely.
That someone can consistently plan for in their life. That's the magic. It's not necessarily anything that I bring to the table.
Absolutely. Well, I love that clarification because I'm just surprised at how often people are not familiar with what that means, what those words mean, particularly the fact that it's not really even direction, it's more companionship. So I think that's a helpful distinction. Okay, I want to know what your plans for the future, your big dreams, your plans for the future, things that you see out on the horizon for the well.
It's so fun. We just had our first big fundraiser about 2 weeks ago, and I'm so glad it's over. And
yeah,
so good to plan. It was really good. We have these amazing groups of people. We have the people who are on staff with us as practitioners. We have a wonderful team of volunteers who will make up our community engagement and fundraising team. We have a board of directors, and all of those groups of people came together to kind of help us make this event happen. And we filmed a little video to kind of try to tell the story of the well a little more briefly, because as you know, I tend to be a little long-winded. And so we filmed this video and we had all of these people telling the story of the well from their perspective. And someone asked this question, like, what is the future of the well? And so it was really, really wonderful to hear all of those people sort of dream big with us about what the well could be in the future. And one of the threads that was so easy to pull through all of those stories was we just hope the well can be in more than one place, that we can find ways to replicate this model in other churches and in other communities for the sake of doing that same mission of creating these pathways toward healing and wholeness in other places, and to contextualize that work in those communities. And so one of the things that's been really important for me and for my business partner, Elizabeth, is we never want to sort of insert ourselves into a community and say, hey, we know what you need to be mentally well. Here's all the things. Good luck.
We'll fix you real quick.
Yeah. There's a lot of, savior complex in that is super unhealthy. And we have, this sort of basis for our work is that communities have what they need within them. It's just about finding those gifts and graces and then elevating them to be used in the right way. And so we would never imagine that we would be coming into a church or coming into a community and being the people with all the answers, or, we're going to fix everything or anything like that, but just longing to partner with communities of faith and the places where those communities of faith are rooted to really elevate what's already there. So that's the dream, is multiple wells around the area. And we've had some really exciting conversations this year that may lead to a replication even before the end of this calendar year. It's possible. So that's the dream. And I think we would love to continue to see it change and grow and become something that's even bigger than what Elizabeth and I could have dreamed about, 5 years ago when we had the middle of the night phone call. So lots of big dreams for the well. I think it's that mission that keeps us grounded. We really want to create these pathways toward healing and wholeness in the community. We have just one community right now, but hopefully it'll be more.
Yeah, maybe the community will get bigger and bigger and bigger. So I love that. And so the best way to engage with the well is
lots
website?
Of different ways. Yeah, website is great. It's thewellmentalandspiritualcare.org, all spelled out. It's kind of clunky. But we also have social media. So we're on Instagram at The Well Raleigh, and that's another good way to sort of keep up with all the things that are happening, all the offerings and practitioners who are available. We also have an email newsletter that goes out about once a month, and so that's a good way to stay connected. You can sign up for that on the website. But yeah, I think the ways to support the well. So if you're someone who values mental well-being and mental health and spirituality and all those kinds of things, we love it when people tell the story of the well, because that's how the word gets out. And so if you know people in your life who are struggling mentally, or maybe you're going through a spiritual wilderness, and you think they might benefit from care in the general Raleigh area, like, wow, we would love for you to tell them about the well. Just kind of keep our name in your back pocket just in case, because that's really that we're just trying to get the word out and let people know we're here. We want to serve, and we want to come alongside people to help them find the healing that they long for. And so, telling our story, finding our website, that's all super
Yes.
ways to get connected.
Well, it's an amazing place, and I really think it fits. It's nice that you have different angles and offerings that people can engage in the sense that they can get the clinical help that they need, or the spiritual help that they need, or the life coaching help, and the classes. I do think that the classes go a long way to sort of maybe help people take a baby step in that direction if that's what's most comfortable to them. And I just love it. I don't know if you're going to have any other middle of the night brainstorms anytime soon, but if you do, I think it would be great.
Okay, well, I'll keep you posted.
Yes.
No, for now. I don't want to say work, but my plate is very full with what's happening at the well in the best way, and so I'm grateful to just have this one epiphany for now.
Yes, maybe 2027 you could have another one, maybe. Okay. Or 2028, maybe we'll push it out a little bit. Yeah, maybe not. Well, this will do for now. I think this is a great one, and you've done an amazing job of following that thread and not just letting it be an idea that floats out into the universe, but really bringing it into a whole manifestation of it. It's beautiful, and I applaud you for that. It's such a great offering. We're so proud of you for doing that, Amanda. Good job.
Thank you. I'm so grateful for your support. Share the story. That's probably like job number one as executive director, is telling the story. So
yes. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming here and sharing it with us. I'm sure my listeners are going to be wanting to hear more and more about it, and they're going to, snatch that information right up and engage with the well. So thank you for joining us today.
Yes. Thanks so much, Sally.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks so much for listening. Hope you got something out of today's conversation. Before we go, I want to remind you of one quick thing. We have a Peaceful Pathways box that is available, and it is a wonderful way to welcome more peace into your daily rhythms. It's a partnership with our friends at Petal and Pink Mental Wellness Boutique, and there are several different ways you can engage with this. There's our large box that has 5 guided meditations, and they're all very immersive and makes you feel like you're actually having the experience when you envision it in your head, following my voice. So that's a card with a link to those 5 meditations, and also a box filled with all sorts of self-care items that align with whatever the meditations are. And with that, if you want to try that out but don't want to get the large box, you could get the mini meditation box, which has 1 meditation and several smaller items, not quite as many self-care items, but they align with the meditation as well. And then you can also try just one card, just a card with a link on it to one meditation. If you're not ready for any of that, but you just want to get a sampling of what our meditations are like, we do have individual meditation cards with those on them. You can check that out at mycreateharmony.com if you want more information on how to do that. They can be listened to over and over and over again, and it's just a wonderful way to bring more peace and joy into your daily rhythms. Hope you'll check that out. And until next time, peace.